Welcome to Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Jessie Ott, the host of this podcast, which is all about beverage innovation. I talk with innovation pioneers from agriculture to glass. Thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe to be notified of all new episodes. Hello, everybody, and welcome to my headset podcast recording today. It's very exciting. It's so sexy with the short hair. I love it. But anyway, more importantly, I'm very, very, very excited to have Melissa Hoffman here, owner and managing director of Dauntless Performance Consulting. Hello, Melissa.
Hi, Jessie. I think very on the nose.
They're very fitting for what we're doing, but not my favorite. But oh well, it's not going to take away from this awesome podcast that we're about to record. So where are you calling from?
I am based in St. Petersburg, Florida, out at the beaches.
Okay, nice. Yeah, St. Pete, we went a couple years ago, maybe in the summer. And our friends, they bought a few years ago, sold it already, and living in St. Louis, Missouri.
It's like contrast in temperatures.
Yeah.
I moved here from New York about almost 10 years ago, like next week, which is crazy. The time went by very, very quickly.
Wow, congratulations on 10 years. That's a jaunt. What brought you there in the first place?
Essentially, I threw a dart at the map. Is really how it happened. Just kind of followed the intuition, but I've always wanted to live by the beach. I grew up in New York City, and so spent time out on Long Island and the Jersey Shore and even City Island. I grew up in the Bronx, and it was always a part of our summers. And there was something so I wouldn't know, soothing and healing about the beach. I didn't know that as a kid, but the older I got, it just stayed on my radar. So moved to the desert first, moved to Las Vegas, and then eventually was back in New York and just couldn't stop thinking about living at the beach, and started looking at the map and honed in on the Tampa Bay area. And this looks good. There's an airport, there's a beach. Let's check it out. So checked it out, and the rest is history.
That's awesome. When I think about what I wanted when I was a kid, riding my bike in my little small town of less than 1,000 people, I remember seeing this woman driving this cabriolet convertible. And I was like, the Volkswagen Cabriolet, they don't make them anymore. But I was like, I'm going to have one of those. I'm going to be on the Gulf Coast. Like, I thought I'd be somewhere over there in, white concrete condo or house, a 2-story house with my golden retriever.
That's a dream.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Fun fact, I've only ever driven convertibles. So that's something that we share.
Well,
I didn't have
funny.
one when I was living in New York City before I moved here. But yeah, all 4 of my cars in my life have been convertibles. I think there's something very freeing about driving a convertible. And so I naturally needed to make my way down here.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah, we finally got warm down here. As you know, it's been in the 30s and cold, but the other day the sun came out and it was, high 60s, and we saw a convertible, and I'm like, yeah, today's a good day for that.
Fair enough.
Celebrate the win.
My weekend to getting our first sun in like 2 or 3 weeks down here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been it is what it is, but it's wintertime, I'm sure it used to be like this all the time. Just like growing up in Iowa, we had 3 feet of snow on the ground at all times for 3 months. Now doesn't always snow. It's weird.
Yeah, everything's weird.
I know, it's true. So you're originally from Manhattan, born and raised in Manhattan?
I grew up in the Bronx, and then I moved here from Brooklyn. So I moved to Brooklyn from Las Vegas later on.
Okay, gotcha. There was just a documentary do you ever watch CBS Sunday Morning? Okay. That makes me, I'm sure I'm just very old, but my mom used to love to watch it. And so she kind of got me on watching it. And they just have really amazing segments. And they had one this Sunday on the Bronx. Yeah, there's like a guy that's a writer, historian, and he has this whole book about the Bronx. And I thought it was pretty cool because obviously, what is it, Fat Joe and, J-Lo and some other people are from the Bronx. And so they were on there too. It was kind of cool.
I will have to hit you up for more information so I can Google that and see if I can find the clip online and find out who this author is and the book. I love that.
Yeah, I bet it's really good. Yeah. He's an older gentleman now, and he's like from Ohio or something, but he just loves the Bronx. and he walks. He's the guy that walks. Have you heard of this guy? The guy that walks the Bronx? Okay. Well, anyway, I'll find it and I'll send it to you.
Start there with a Google, the guy who walks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess he's well known. I mean, you've been gone 10 years, so maybe it started after you left, Very cool. So you started in the Bronx. Did you go to school there?
Well, not college. I grew up there. I went to parochial school, so Catholic elementary and high school. And I did finish high school a little bit north of the city. We moved when I was 16. And then I went
Well, that's
to
tough.
Yeah, it was. I went from an all-girl Catholic high school in the Bronx to a co-ed public high school,
Well, that was kind of
like an
fun.
hour north of the city. I mean, it was a massive shock to the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was an athlete tomboy that wore uniforms to school, and I was like, oh, I have to assimilate into society. There are boys here. What is going on? Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, completely different.
Yeah, I think though it was really something that me, fairly young age. I mean, teens are incredibly formative, but that I could adjust and adapt to anything. And I went to 3 different colleges, and so in that it was like, okay, I'm here, and this isn't really the vibe. And so, I learned really early that you can change your life if something's not working. So yes, I've got 10 years here, but I've lived in a few places across the country and spent some time in Italy during my career, and back in New York and here. And this is the longest I've lived anywhere since growing up in the Bronx here in St. Pete. But it absolutely ignited my love of travel and experiencing new things. So although, 16-year-old me, I'm sure was having a time, but I do think it set me up for the understanding that you can break down and rebuild at any point. So I love about what that taught me.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it's not surprising coming from someone who spent a lot of time taking psychology and the insight into the human brain, I guess, and emotions, which I can't wait to get into. So you said 3 different colleges. What did you go to different colleges for?
I originally, growing up an athlete, I started out with an athletic training physical therapy intention. And so I went to Western Michigan University and started the programming there. And it was a combination of paying out of state tuition and realizing that this was going to cost a lot of money that I would have to repay. And so I ended up at a small school that also has a focus in athletic training in rural Pennsylvania. I was there for a semester. That did not work out well at all. And that was not the vibe. And and ended up at university at Albany back in New York. And that was for a mix of reasons. There were a lot of people from my graduating high school class that was there. The guy who was dating at the time from high school was at a private college in the Capital District area. And interestingly enough, I don't know that I would have gotten into Albany out of high school. And so it's interesting that 3 semesters in school got me into a university that I, wouldn't have necessarily been able to get into. But I ended up with a real crisis in what I wanted to do. I was moving away from the athletic training and physical therapy. I had a knee injury my senior year of high school that I thought could continue to propel me in that direction from the healing perspective. But it turned out to be, I guess, just a little too hard psychologically to continue in that space. And I took a seriously wrong turn into a business degree, which was not really my aptitude. And I ended up doing terribly for a couple of semesters. I was also working to put myself through school. So that was a really interesting time. And long way around, I ended up going back to some of the original things that I was really interested in when I was a bit younger and in high school. 2 of the electives I'd taken my senior year of high school were forensics and psychology. And lo and behold, SUNY Albany has a great psychology program and one of the top criminal justice programs also. And
That's
so
cool.
I found what I had begun with in some capacity and continued to get my bachelor's in psychology with a focus on abnormal. And
What's abnormal? Everyone?
Well, so technically speaking, there is a text that defines diagnoses outside of normal, but effectively, I wanted to be a criminologist.
Okay. So you like watching all those FBI crime shows too?
I love those shows, books. My newest offshoot of that is military espionage, clandestine organizations. So that's a television and movie thing, I guess. I could think of a better word that I tend toward, and reading.
Yeah.
Love those
Yeah.
types of books. Yes.
So you've seen Lioness then?
I've seen Lioness
So
in
good.
a very short window of time. I just plowed through. Both
Yeah.
seasons were out when I think it was my brother recommended that I watch it. Yes.
Very
One
good.
of my most recent also. So Lioness and SEAL Team.
Okay, I haven't seen SEAL Team. Is it the new one or the TV show?
It is a TV show. It's on
Okay.
Paramount.
I've seen some of those seasons.
David Boreanaz is in it, and he's a huge Philly fan. We were talking about the Eagles and such earlier, but yeah, that's another great show.
Yeah, I like that too. Night Agent was kind of fun and interesting. Didn't see that one.
But
it's in its second season.
It all circles back into where we'll end up as our conversation moves forward. But when I get into these clandestine and military, especially the branches of the military that are so glamorized, like the Navy SEALs, there are so many SEALs that end up being keynote speakers, and they write books. Like you think about Jocko and Rich Diviney, who wrote The Attributes. There's something to be studied about the culture of organizations and teams like that is absolutely transferable and related to business. So there's more than just darkness that lives in my brain that powers my interest in all these books and programming.
I was just thinking about this morning, and when you look at the different business owners around, like I have a part of my special segment, I started interviewing veterans that have their own businesses in the civilian world. And I don't know this to be a fact. I don't know this to be true. I just feel like SEALs are definitely, just because they're so driven, when they quit, they have to do something with all that drive, right? But I also feel like when I don't know about all the branches and how many, there's a different percentage of people that actually are in these different branches. But I feel like Marines, there's a lot of Marines that have their own businesses. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's just because I've run into podcasts, I've run into this, that, and the other. But I feel like, to your point, that structure and that discipline is what you need to have to stay focused and build a business.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense. And when I think about building teams from a leadership perspective, military is a great avenue. And also I love hiring athletes or former athletes. There's a thread of that discipline, rigor, grit, resilience, mental toughness, coachability, right? That it all translates back
that's true.
into, especially, my functional area is primarily sales. And so all of those things, mental toughness, rejection, resilience, those are all things we got to look for when building, sales teams and from a sales leadership perspective.
Yeah, you got to hear no a lot, right?
Oh, and
I haven't heard what you've heard it enough.
No, and not good enough.
Not good enough. Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting. So did you feel like you were going to get into the CSI or work for like a police organization and I guess you have to sort of start with police to be a detective, but maybe not to be CSI. Maybe forensics is more science. CSI. Right? So
forensics wasn't necessary. That was kind of a blip on the radar. I definitely was not interested in getting a medical degree to end in a forensics lab. But I did, when I graduated college, I did move out to Las Vegas with the intent of, at the time, the city was exploding. And so all of the law enforcement agencies were hiring. And when I was still in school, actually, it was my junior. It took me 5 years to graduate school because I moved around a
Yeah.
lot. But
Me too.
but my junior year, so I guess effectively my fourth year, I was recruited by the state police of New York, and so that was an avenue that I thought about taking. And so it programs me to think, okay, if I join a law enforcement agency and then can get some of my master's degree paid for, that could set me up to then move into a different direction where perhaps I would end up, in a higher ranking in a different capacity in a state agency, or maybe be able to move into the federal side of the law enforcement operations. And
You ended up what?
wine business.
In the wine business.
Yes. Yes.
If all fails,
So
join the wine business.
I guess it was, speaking of lessons that younger self makes, it was 24. I was managing a restaurant in Las Vegas, and I, came up through school bartending and such, and started to get involved in the beverage program. And I was still doing my thing, my intended career path. And I had a rep from one of the distributors that would come in and taste my wine, and it was done in such a way that I really felt like I was being educated around something every time he came in, and started to observe an aptitude for it that was really interesting to me. And at the time, some family friends who were both homicide detectives in the NYPD were having a very, very, very challenging their life. And I had this thought process about how difficult it must be at that time. We know a lot more about mental health and PTSD and all, but this is in the early 90s, early 2000s. And I had this moment where I was really taking the lessons and what I was learning about what was going on with them and deciding what I wanted from my life. And the affection might be an overstatement, but yeah, the affection, the interest, the obsession with that level of darkness and dysfunction. And then on the other side, I have this wine, food, culture, travel, and I give that version of me a lot of credit for the choice that she made. And I decided to pursue the wine side of the hospitality industry.
Yeah, that's a big choice. And it's interesting the universe showed you those struggles. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So then what happens? How long do you stay in Vegas?
So again, true to form, I do nothing half-assed. 2 speeds, stop and go.
Yeah.
So I can't find the middle. And so a couple of educational learning roles from there. I ended up as a wine director at a local wine bar that had the first enomatic machines in the state, I think. And even then they weren't popular. I mean, that's like 2006. They still weren't quite popular yet here in the US. And then I joined a restaurant group that was moving out from New York to open their first restaurants on the West Coast. So the Bastianich Hospitality Group. And I was floated by someone in trade development at one of the major distributors in the area as one of the professionals in Las Vegas that was focused on Italian wine. I had decided pretty early on in my career, after getting the two, at the time there were 4 pins, so like an intro and a certified before the advanced and the master. And so I'd gotten the first 2 pins and then just realized I didn't care as much about the rest of the world as I did about Italy. And so the wine bar was also Italian focused. So I ended up working for that group for some time. I opened 4 restaurants between Las Vegas and Los Angeles, and then went to work for Michael Mina. So I worked for 2 celebrity chefs in Las Vegas. And then I decided that it was time for the desert to kick rocks. And I wanted to move on to the commercial side of the industry. I was starting to not necessarily lose my passion for tasting and for that nerd life, but I became far more interested in why people made the buying decisions that they did and the financial side of the industry. And so I packed everything up and went to Italy for a few months and worked in a restaurant off the coast of Venice, and worked at a winery that has 2 locations, one in Tuscany and one in Piedmont, and then traveled around and just visited most of the regions in Italy in a full immersion. And so that was a really wonderful time.
Wow. Did you speak Italian?
I learned enough on my way to going there to be somewhat functional. Learned a bit more, although there were obstacles to that while I was on the ground. I think people who at the restaurant, people who had spoke, they were Italian, but they had worked at restaurants in London. And so they spoke English. And then, I was living with them, and in the restaurant, when you're getting your ass kicked, it was easier for them to speak to me in English than for us to have to futz around in Italian to get the point across. Right. And then, one of the pastry chef, I remember we were having a conversation. I was telling her I need her to speak to me in Italian. She's like, but I wanted to learn English. I'm like, then you come to the States, but I'm here. And then at the winery, some of the same things. It was easier to be spoken to in English than Italian. So I did not learn as much Italian as I would have liked to learn. Plus, I didn't grow up speaking another language, so that's really it's challenging to learn as an adult. As a kid, you just absorb everything. So I can get by every now and then. I'll run into a situation where I can bust out.
Buonasera.
The thing that got me in trouble is because I studied Italian food and wine for so long, my accent was really good. So if I opened my mouth, I would just get assaulted with full force, like, oh, this, and I can, if I'm in Spain, I look Spanish. If I'm in Italy, I look Italian. I can pass for a lot of different origins. And so that was very risky. So I got really good at saying, whoa, I'm American. Please. Can you say that again? Yeah. I was in Brazil for a month a couple of summers ago, and same thing there. I just got assaulted with Brazilian Portuguese. Like, oh, not quite. Not quite.
Not today.
Yeah, not today. That's not good. Maybe tomorrow.
Disculpe. That's my only word. Excuse me.
Excuse me. Yeah. So that was that transition phase of my career from the sommelier floor to the commercial side of the business.
So what happens after Italy? Is that when you went to St. Pete? Oh, you went back to New York. Okay.
Back in New York, got my first distributor job, cut my teeth on the mean streets. And then the winery that I worked for in Italy hired me to represent their wines in the US. And so I made my way over to the import side of the business from there.
Okay. That's a massive undertaking.
Yeah. While I wouldn't, at the time I would, but I would not replace that year I spent as a distributor rep in New York, not having lived in New York City in a very long time. So it's not like I walked in and had all these relationships, It was a build. It was a build from the ground up based on skill set and then also reputation. But I've always had a more zoomed out approach to almost anything, and I can go down to the fundamentals and then meet somewhere in the middle. I tend to think in the two extremes, stop and go, small and big vision, and then kind of fill in the gaps from there. And I had suspected that I would be a better fit for an importer or brand representative role, working at a higher level, managing a bigger scope of business than the nuanced route of the day to day. Whereas there are some personalities and ways of thinking where you can go in really deep into these accounts. And I just had a feeling that I would be better working with distributor partners and managing relationships from that perspective. So I spent a few years working at two different importers.
Okay, that's fun. A lot of good experience and meeting a lot of people all over the country. That's exciting.
It was.
A lot of travel, I'm sure.
Travel, yeah.
Yeah.
And I love to travel, even the gritty parts of it. Like, you got to take the good with the bad. Like, you can't want something and not want all of it.
Yeah.
And so, the long drives, a lot of plane travel, all that ending up in effectively strangers' cars for an entire day. You've got to have some ability to love the absurdity of it.
Yeah, fair point. Yes, all those ride withs. Yeah. Those endless blitzes.
I hate that word so much.
I
reacted to it.
Do people even do them anymore?
I'm sure.
Yeah, probably. I don't know.
I don't hate the concept. I hate the word.
Yeah, it's kind of an odd word.
The head with something, for so long, it just becomes, you get a tick from it.
It sounds like a pastry to me.
Isn't there a pastry called a blintz? Maybe that's why.
Maybe that's why.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Tell us in a message.
Yeah, there we go. Awesome. Okay, so you're back in New York. You've worked for a couple of importers. Then what happens next?
The beach was calling.
Okay,
And
that's when the beach started.
yeah, the beach was calling. There were 2 blizzards back to back in March of a very specific year that I'll never forget. And I was not having it. So after a few months, got the map out, got the head around it, came to visit in December of that year. Within a few weeks, I was locked and loaded with a new role. That was the second importer that I worked for. And then within 3 weeks after that, I was here. And that was 10 years ago. And around the same time-ish that the beach was calling, 750.
Okay. And
Not only did I leave New York and move to a state where I didn't know anyone, I moved into a completely different segment of the industry.
And what was that? What did you do for them?
I originally, my first role was as the regional director for distributor sales. And as the years went by, I moved into a national role and focused on enterprise and opening new markets.
Okay. And what were your biggest challenges with that? And because, our industry is very slow to evolve, and technology isn't our, our signature. What do you call it? I don't know. Signature. People don't know this industry for being, high tech.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
I don't know why
yes.
I can't find the words. That's embarrassing.
Nice. Okay. Not at all. It was an interesting experience. While yes, it was challenging to get the masses along to our line of thinking, and I make multiple references to the crime scene board that is not my life, but like my career, and putting all the pieces together and hanging the photos on the wall. And how do I get this dot to connect to this dot to solve the problem? And that's truly what it turned into. And it was finding the leverage points, finding the referrals, finding the people who were advocates. It could be as simple as, the one person that in a small town in some state that moved from a bigger market where 750 was already established. And then they get vocal, and then they get you one introduction, and then they get their tasting group on your site. And so talk about a practical like crime scene board of how to influence people.
Yep.
Which is,
well, I mean, your interest in psychology certainly propels that, for sure.
Well, people have always been the thing that I'm most interested in. I would say, I don't know that I've ever said this before. I think that everything else that I'm interested in serves that modality, or that serves everything else that I'm interested in.
I see that. Yeah.
Yeah. And when
sure.
I think about the affection and formal education around how the mind works, how humans interact, and even the criminal justice criminology side of it all, it's the difference between having nefarious intent and having productive and beneficial intent, right? How what I'm about to say next can be contextualized is I have made a career out of how can I get people to do the things I want them to do. So I was either going to be a cult leader or
that's scary, Melissa,
or have some success as a salesperson and a sales leader, right? Imparting the wisdom onto, the next generation after I, fucked around and found out for long enough. But it's true.
I like the second decision.
Yeah, my intent was always good. It's like, no, you need this. Let me tell you what's good for you. No,
yeah,
obviously,
that's awesome.
Obviously, I'm joking about it and I'm making it actually entertaining because that's also how I like to live my life. But yeah, it was all for the greater good of, in some cases, dragging the industry along.
Yeah.
To a more effective and efficient way of doing business. And that's also one of my kinks. It's just anything we can do, we can optimize. And that is that's really how I went to the market. But yeah, persuasion, man, influence, all of it.
Yeah. Well, it's also showing them a better life, right? What you were offering them is solving so many problems. So, as an analyst versus a psychologist, and I got connected with my mentor, whom I'm super pumped about. He's a manager at KPMG out in Silicon Valley, but he's done the tech stuff and now he's a manager. So he's had to learn how to switch from being an analyst and solving problems to selling. And he's like, it's a major shift, right? And so we kind of talked about this before. It's not my favorite, right? Selling. I love connecting with people and I love meeting new people. And I love telling them all the ways I'm going to help them. But the salesy part, I don't like. And, it's just, I like the connecting part. I do like that. I really like meeting new people because like you, people do fascinate me. But we end on the same plane, but we come from different backgrounds and areas for that, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. And last we spoke, we dug into this a little bit and I asked you to do a little mental work around what it is about sales that you don't like. Because interestingly enough, I didn't share this when we spoke. I had a hard time when I was in my distributor sales role because I didn't want to come off salesy and gross. And there was this mindset shift that I hit. And I think it's in order to be, being a connector, being personable, varying levels, of course, of charisma and ability to connect. But I think you just have to be interested. Be interested. And interested. And that is one of the fundamentals. Like that's the foundation of building relationships. And, we're not talking telesales here. We're talking about the kind of sales where you are working toward enhancing someone's workflow, their P&L, whatever the case may be, with something that you offer. And thinking of it in more of an energy exchange than I'm trying to sell you something is a good shift in that direction. It takes reps to close, meaning not representatives, like reps, like 15 biceps curls in a gym. It takes reps to really finesse your mechanics on closing a deal.
Yes.
But the process that leads up to that is about knowing the value that you bring in what you're bringing, having done the work on the audience that you're trying to target, the broad total addressable market, and then down to the individual, and just be interested in trying to solve that problem and exchange something for it.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Big data is the big word, right? It's been around a long time, but people still don't really understand it or know what it means in the context of how can it help me, and obviously big data is just an overall arching theme of it all. And, getting into the business analytics and getting more in the micro mindset of that is the solve, right? And so can you talk a little bit about what 750 was solving for distributors?
Yeah, it was a two-sided approach. It was about solving challenges for buyers and solving challenges for distributors. And the ultimate goal at its inception was the aggregation of the market. So when I was a buyer, I was looking at Excel spreadsheets, PDFs, someone yapping about a portfolio that they didn't have the depth of knowledge. Again, I'm not saying I was knowledgeable across every country and wine region of the world, but at a time where Italian wine and spirits and beer, for that matter, were not yet cool like they are now, like they still were working on a reputation rebuild. I was the person that was the authority in the rep and buyer relationship on the product. And I wanted to be educated about what was in the portfolio. And there wasn't an easy way to really do that work. Or on the other side of it, have that information readily accessible to the representative who is coming in to show me wines. And so the concept of the two-sided marketplace where distributors could be in an aggregated space where buyers can shop portfolios through data that was standardized and normalized and enriched, that solved those problems because it was also giving the distributor teams that same level of visibility, not just in their own portfolio, but the entirety of the market of the wholesalers that were subscribing. So the visibility of products and offerings was really blown open in a way that was unprecedented for the awareness, the searchability, and the ease of learning more about the entire scope of what was offered in your area.
Yeah, I met a gentleman in India, and he had been doing that in ERP kind of solutions in India with with pharmaceutical companies and this, that, and the other. And I was just too young and too immature to figure out how am I as a kid going to even try to build a company and do that. So it was inevitable. It was going to happen, and obviously there was a need for it.
Yeah, the fact capitalized on necessity and frustration. It's like necessity is the mother of invention, but I say it differently. Necessity and frustration is the mother of invention. You just get so tapped out on the way something is, and sure, lightning has to strike in order to build something as successful as 750 was.
Yeah. So what happened after 750?
I have been at there's two tracks. There's the linear one, and then there's the concurrent one, right? So two Beverage startups later, I am continuing on the concurrent track of having my own business. During the 750 days, I really flipped a script on how I was approaching almost everything, right? But specifically my role and the mechanics of what I was doing on a daily basis for my actual role in the organization was really locked and loaded. And I bore easily. Maybe that's not the best way to say it, but I'm consistently reaching for something, right?
You're a learner.
And as soon as there's a baseline and I'm like, okay, cool, everything's in its place, what's next, right? Consistently raising the bar. And I had some pretty significant health issues backtracking a few years that I was in the process of addressing. And through that, I started to get into the polar opposite of abnormal psychology and the criminal enterprises and shifted my focus into positive psychology and mental health. And that and understanding and learning more about people hate when I say that's what I'm saying anyway, my meat suit, right? So understanding how our everything works, how our neurobiology, our neurochemistry, and I needed to take control over something that was betraying me is effectively, where I'm coming from with that.
Suit.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And
I think it's awesome.
Good. I hope anyone who's listening to this is cringing at that. But I had a doctor tell me that I needed to start meditating. I've tried meditating. I can't do it. I'm broken. It's broken. And it was like, no, that's not acceptable at all. And so started on this deep dive and, started practicing the techniques that can lead to a state of meditation. And I got into yoga and I got into the philosophy of yoga and ended up getting certified as a coach because I saw a vision for where the organization, I was at 750 at the time, where the organization was going and how big we had the potential to grow. And I always, you're not on a quest for, people mastery in quotes without having experience being able to leverage them to an advantage. And again, not in a nefarious way, but for the benefit of the collective was my outlook on that. And so I saw there being some potential for leadership roles. And I had led without authority for so long, right? You're managing distributor relationships, you're influencing their sales teams, you're influencing buyers, all of that. So how do we flip the script, right? So I got certified as a coach and then found myself after that certification feeling like I didn't learn enough. And so set out on my own curriculum of courses and, books about leadership, about culture, about high performance and building habits. And I mean, I was a machine for a few years. But after I had pulled myself out of this, really brutal health state, I had just this newfound, like, holy shit, has the sky always been that color blue? Like, let's go. We got this.
That's
And,
awesome.
yeah, it was really a wonderful time to have that of mental capacity and freedom. There's so long feeling like such garbage and just dragging myself through my life.
Yeah.
And so I was very fortunate to have had and built a lot of trust with the founders of 750. So I was able to begin coaching internally. And we had employee resource groups and company advocacy groups. And so I founded the Wellness Company Advocacy Group. So I led meditations with one of my colleagues who would DJ while I was doing the guided meditations. And I had a Slack channel where I would post articles. I would host roundtables with managers. And so that inevitably moved into me having a lot of influence within the organization. And so then I moved into a formal leadership role where I built a team and led the supplier, also the importers and producers vertical for the business. And that's where it got good because I got handed a laboratory. I mean, I adored my team. I hired most of them myself. 80% of them went through a hiring process as I built it with me. There were a couple of reps that were already on the team. And so I had this space where anything that I had learned through the coursework, the book, I got a chance to experiment with it. And it really, it really was like I was the executor of the lab that was all of my work as an individual contributor. But now I got the chance on one-on-ones, on group calls to really run experiments, yield the results. So I took that leadership role not only very seriously, but from the lens of almost a psychological researcher.
Yeah.
Right.
Sounds like it.
And that was a lot of fun. And I had a great team. We're all very widely dispersed in new roles since then, but it was a banger of a time. We had a lot of fun. We hit a lot of great goals, and it was absolutely one of the best times of my life.
That's exciting.
It was great. It was really great. You get to the point, and leadership isn't for everyone. Managing certainly isn't for everyone. And I have joked, oh man, this mental, and not to make light of mental illness at all with everything that I've said, but like, what is this mental illness that I love leading people? Because it can be really challenging, and you've got to be
very challenging,
really hard conversations and maintain your composure and your emotional regulation to be at the top of its game in order to be a strong leader. But I lost my train of thought as to where I was going with that. So it can be a thought all on its.
Well, I mean, it is a challenge. It's a lot of stress in the sense you have goals, you have sales goals, and then your team has their list of accounts. And then it comes down to learning how to close, right? I don't know if that's a trainable thing or not. I'm sure there's, yeah. Totally. Okay. I'm sure some have just the natural ability to do it, and others probably need to be coached.
A little harder at it. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, sales is a science, and it's an art. In any given moment, it could be further swung into one direction than the other. But yeah, I don't know if I want to avoid the landmine of talking about personality types and tendencies as it relates to the sales functional area of things. But I think that anyone that's client facing, whether it's in a support role, post-sale role, or the sales role, or even the business development side, all facets of that they require a specific set of skills. And I believe that some of the best that have done it have a natural, maybe not natural, it can be built and enhanced, but a natural ease and confidence. Because one of the critical skills of a salesperson, of course, is to disarm their prey. Oh, that was a wild way to say that, but it's true. And sometimes it's a little bunny hunt, and sometimes you're hunting big game and understanding the mechanics of the difference of those two. I'm not encouraging anybody head out to Africa and try to kill an elephant. Like, that's not cool, but you understand the reference that I'm making, yeah?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you something. When you were calling on distributors versus suppliers, was there a different approach that you had to take, or did you talk to like the CIOs of distributors and CEOs of suppliers, or like what was your strategy? Were they different?
Yes. And fundamentally, because the tools I'm offering were geared toward the cog in the wheel that particular addressable market had. So the tools that were sold to distributors were very different than the offering that was sold to suppliers. And as a result of that, the ideal client profile was just distributors on that end. How I made my way through organizations in order to get to the budget holder just depended market by market, and whatever the crime scene, whoever's photo on the crime scene board was up.
I love this strategy, this crime scene strategy.
Yeah.
Makes it so much more fun.
Yeah. I think a lot of what I do and say is to entertain myself and to keep myself engaged. And I know my audience, right? If it's not being well received, I'll pull back a little bit. But if it is, then why not? Sometimes I would, get into the org because there was a sales rep who was really dogged about, I moved from this market. I miss these tools. I'm going to tell my manager. I'm going to make sure they tell this person and this person and this person. I'm like, yeah, you do that. Let me know. Let me know if you need anything. Exactly right. And then sometimes it would be a cold email to the COO, and you just hit the right notes in an email. And the next thing you know, you're on a call. And so there was no one strategy. There was no one size fits all for that approach. Whereas the supplier side of the business, the tools were really built to enhance the product in the way it was viewed by distributors and by buyers. So the ICP there is marketing, right? Or brand facing work. And then the model shifted into B2B advertising in the marketplace. And so that still sat pretty squarely with marketing. So whether or not that team was made aware of the offering by a regional salesperson that I had a relationship with, or a buyer who knew the supplier and who said, hey, your products could look, it was a similar leveraging of network. And then typically the marketing person, if they weren't the budget holder, they would take it from there. That might require another call, right? But otherwise, typically a person that once you have an advocate, it tends to be a bit easier to bring other people along for the ride. But different outcomes, so a completely different strategy and how you've spoken the tools and brought them around to your line of thinking and the objective for the business.
So what else does your consultancy provide for customers?
So this stage, because prior to 2 years ago, I was primarily focusing on coaching. So I had distributor clients where I was coaching their sales team around mindfulness tools to increase efficacy. And I always joked around that, the tactics and the information at its surface can seem really soft, but I promise you there's nothing soft about emotional regulation, thought and behavioral change, learning how the practices of mindfulness can lead to a state of meditation, leveraging gratitude in the work environment, right? It seems a little touchy-feely. Anyone that knows me pretty well knows that I'm like a teddy bear that has a fake vibe, but it's only because, if you're in sales, you got to be a little bit of a killer, and I'm an athlete, and you got to be, your head's got to be in it, but your head's got to be in it. And if your head is all over the place, I can't tell you how many things I've helped untangle for people that were not related to their professional skill set. There were what's going on here and here. And that's a game that I really leveraged as a leader with my expertise and what I had done for myself. Consulting. So now, yes, I still do that. Yes, I still do that. But I currently have 2 of my main clients. One is a digital performance marketing firm, And the other is a data company that was founded by two of my former colleagues from 750. So I am still in the game of courting distributors to solve data issues. The
Nice.
outcomes are different. 750 was a technology platform and a SaaS in and of itself, right? A marketplace, CRM, sample sheet creation. But what TippleTech does is it works directly with the distributor data themselves to standardize, normalize, create a single source of the same product, to optimize multi-source data files, to be able to get the most out of what your product data has to offer through whatever platforms you're leveraging, whether it's your ERP's e-commerce, your business intelligence tools. There's a reason garbage in, garbage out is a phrase in the data world. So Full Tech and Mushroom Media are two primary clients of mine that I work business development and work in an advisory capacity. I'm also an advisor for a friend's import company, and we are working on expanding into new markets. That company is called Intuitive Wines. And I do have a couple of brand clients that I am ramping up into getting back to my roots, it would seem, which is really entertaining for me at this point in my career.
All right.
I've been so removed from the liquid side of the business for so long that
Yeah.
it's fun to have a couple of brands that I'm really excited about.
Well, yeah, and you can leverage that through your relationships with the distributors.
Exactly right. And, the coaching, my ethos as a human being will always be there. The difference between coaching and consulting, there is a contrast for what it is. So I'll always have a passion for coaching, but yeah, we are capitalists in a capitalist society, and hunters got to hunt.
Hunters got to hunt.
On prey drive. And so, yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. So my nephew dog, Billy, he's 51% Catahoula and then like 25% hound.
Okay.
And he's a hound, man. He's a prey hunter. He looks for lizards, he's killed snakes, he chased squirrels, birds. Like he just has his nose to the ground and he's just when we go on walks. I mean, he's just a hunter.
I love it. If I were a dog, I would be a mix of a German Shepherd and a Belgian Malinois.
Wow. Yeah. Those are two amazing by themselves dogs.
Yeah. There's a hybrid there. And, maybe one of the two parents was a little dopey and like got kicked out of military school. Cause I do have a class clown side to me. But man, when that prey drive kicks in, it is something.
Go time.
I was going to say one of the things that I am enjoying the most about this phase of my career is building out a team for my consulting company and bringing people along for the ride in their functional areas. So having someone that works in marketing operations and another business development hire and BI and analytics and all people that I've either worked with before or have fostered relationships with in the industry, and being able to hunt for business that's not necessarily in my functional area specialization. But, one of the analogies I used to use at 750 was get out there and go bring something back to the cave is how I would, is one of my motivation angles. And so it feels nice to be able to offer the skill sets of some of the most talented people that I've worked with in my career, and then also offer them an outlet for, whether it's side hustle or if they're working full time on their own operations, enhancing their business as well, which is love.
Yeah, that's really cool. Do you have any mentors that helped you along your career that you want to mention?
Hey, when I saw this question, I had a really interesting time running through that thought exercise, because there have been people along the way on both sides of that coin where I have learned so much about how I don't want to be from people. That is an interesting mentor opportunity in and of itself. And I found myself, I think from a really young age, tuned in, really dialed into observing what I didn't want as much as dreaming about what I did.
Yeah.
As far as, I had a great boss at one of my first roles in the wine business at the wine bar that I mentioned. Same, right? You're observing people for who they are at all times. And there were things that I loved, and there were things that I was like, I would have done that differently, or I would do that differently. And then how do you take that forward? One of the people that does stand out, he was our chief revenue officer in the end at 750. And he came on board the same year I did as our director of marketing. And he grew to a level of being such a pivotal leader in the organization. And I watched his voracious aptitude for everything that he did. And we worked fairly closely together, considering that we were in a completely different departments, even though sales and marketing really is, one ecosystem as it relates to awareness and strategy in the business, expanding the business. But he's who floated me for my leadership role in the organization. And that really meant a lot to me, knowing that someone was at the table and advocating for me on
Yeah.
when I wasn't at the table, right? I put in all the work to be the ideal candidate for sure, but it doesn't always go in the direction that you want it to just simply because of that. And so he was a big advocate for me. He absolutely was the person that I got the most out of in our one-to-one conversations. I learned so much from him. His name is Adam Van Fossen. He works for a company called Health Sherpa now as the VP of growth. And he continues to be one of the most impressive people I've ever worked with in my career. Yeah.
That says a lot. That's very cool.
I love the way his brain works, brainstorming with him. One of the most important things for me as a leader was always to help someone learn how to think about something versus solving a problem for them. And you could just do that with Adam in the way that he presented himself. Like, you could learn about how his brain was working in how he was communicating to you. And that was a big takeaway that reinforced one of my key skills that I brought to growing others.
That's interesting. It's pretty common for women of our age not really to have a mentor. Men a lot of times do, especially the older generation, but it's not very common.
Yeah. I ended up, we all have these moments of existential observation in our lives. And I've thought a lot about this. Like, I have had phases in my mental health where it's not completely optimized. And I'm like, man, if I just had a more engaged upbringing in this capacity, I could have done this. And it took a lot of work to stop begrudging that at different phases of my life, whether it was growing up, whether it was a high school coach, whether it was this in college, whatever the case may be, and to really understand that you wouldn't be who you are now. And that's what we get to focus on, and that's what we get to control. And I do think that how strongly I show up in my work and in my personal and social life for people is almost a response to not getting what I wish I had. I found this thing out and it works. Got to tell everybody, right? And so, I worked really hard to show up as a person that I wish when I was growing up. That's a better way to say it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, I wish I knew about emotional intelligence like 20 years ago. I wish that was a thing that was part of your high school education. I mean, think of how more
breath work in school, right? How to regulate your nervous system. The information is more widely available than ever, but it is not fully democratized. And that is something that, I spend a lot of time in my non-working life at yoga classes, at a mantra meditation, taking care of physical and emotional health.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's becoming more widely known or used. Hopefully, manifestation has been a word that's really been popular.
And the science to support some of the things that people think are just out there and woo woo
Yep.
and new age. Okay.
Yeah, it really is. I'm like EFT and, the neurological associations with some pressure points and how it's been scientifically proven to actually put energy towards whatever it is you're trying to feel, whether you have a stomach ache or a headache or whatever.
Exactly.
It's kind of an interesting path, but probably not for, not for. What about any resources that you've used either professionally, or I know that you've taken a lot of classes in psychology and, obviously you're a big industry advocate. So is there anything that you recommend for people to check out?
It's, for me, the information is out there and you just got to find whatever spackle for the hole that you want to fill out. I mean, with online education as it is, there's just not a lot of excuses as to why you wouldn't be able to progress. And I promise you that they don't all require a monetary investment. You look at platforms like Coursera, you can do a free version of a course and you may not matriculate and get a certification as a result of it because then you pay for that, but you can still ingest all of the information and then take it out and practically apply it. Sure, those courses are great for resume building, but at the same time, so is the reputation that comes from being able to execute, right? So you don't always necessarily have to pay for something. Libraries still exist. Like I recognize and respect that I have afforded myself resources and being able to stock a personal library that this is only half of, and that, so I can't say it enough. Like libraries exist, book exchanges, used bookstores, right? Where you can buy a book for $1. I mean, those are
Right.
I love shopping at used bookstores. But for me, I've taken certifications in the psychology of leadership from Cornell School of Management, building high performing teams, managing as a coach, influence, high performance collaboration. Those are just a few of the titles or the headers, the names of the courses that I've taken. But the extended learning is also in a lot of what's back here. So I love, there's an author, his name is Daniel Coyle. The Talent Code and The Culture Code are two books. One book is about the individual. The other book is about groups and teams and the collective. You can take a lot of lessons from there. The Four Agreements is a completely different, like, left turn. The Four Agreements is one of my favorites as well. I recommend that to a lot of people who are maybe struggling with some of the dynamics in their lives. It's a good way to teach and learn specific ways of four techniques moving through the world to optimize the way we're receiving and outputting. I read books that lean into the metaphysical, right? Meditation, manifestation, yogic philosophies, and then also, business books. And so, I'm happy to provide a reading list, or if anybody wants to reach out to learn some of my favorites. I'm all over the map when it comes to, organizational optimization. I think of the key things that stand out. But coming back to that mentor thing, podcast, the mentors are out there. Find one you resonate with and listen to everything that they have to say.
Yeah.
I did that with Carla Harris. She was in the finance world, and she's got a couple of great books. Let me remind myself of one of the Expect to Win was one of her great books. I think that's what got me into it. So I just started to listen to everything that she did. Jim Lohr is the author of The Only Way to Win, and it's essentially about like how being a good person will help you in business. And I don't know if that's something that can necessarily be taught. I know someone can be reformed into that, but for yourself. But I like his information. And I can't emphasize enough, like, learning how your physical and emotional state and everything that you do. So I was a very, very early adopter of Dr. Andrew Huberman, who is now famous beyond measure in the world. He's got a podcast called Huberman Lab. Before he even started that, he was making the podcast circuit. He teaches a lot about the optimization of self and human performance. And then let's see, Stephen Kotler, who is the founder, he's the managing director of the Flow Research Collective. So I learned a lot about optimizing neurochemistry for flow state, not just in the individual, but in the group. So that is helpful to leverage in meetings and when you're collaborating and working on projects.
Mm-hmm.
Collaboration makes dopamine, which is the molecule of motivation and seeking and prey drive, right? All of that. So those are some fun resources that can get people kicked off if they're interested.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot. Thank you. What do you see from your perspective are the biggest pain points in the industry? It's easy, right? It's kind of an easy one.
I mean, it's easy and it's also like, where do I begin?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
While having the pleasure and privilege of being pretty early to market on the tech side of the bev industry, I think we're more fragmented than ever. Innovation has come so far that not that there needs to be only one, two, or three tools for the industry, but there are so many now that I wonder if it's causing more of a disconnect and making more problems than there needs to be
Yeah.
versus
Okay.
the optimization. You and I believe, sometimes you have so many conversations, you're not sure who you had it with, but I think this was us speaking about this. How much innovation the beverage alcohol industry has had over the last 10 years and how crowded the market is as a result of it. And now,
Very.
right. And so now we're looking at these oversaturated, I shouldn't say over, yeah, maybe they are oversaturated. Don't get me wrong. Oversaturated, seltzers, RTDs. Now we've got the cannabis game, which I'm, a huge advocate for, but it's a lot. It's a lot. There's a lot
Yeah.
of
It's a lot.
competition.
Our industry can't handle it.
So, I think that's something. And then when you get into the capitalism of it all, we've got consolidation abound. And so what does that mean? And when I think about how many, just even in the last 6 to 8 months, how many of our colleagues in the industry around the country have now been displaced by some version or another of that. And one of the things I started thinking about a couple of weeks ago is wondering if we're going to see the what we're looking for the creation of these like fractional sales roles where
Yeah.
you've
It's
got
happening.
people who have such an intense amount of experience in the industry. And it's like, all right, you can put together working for this brand in this territory, this brand and this brand, this brand, and now you've got yourself a little bit of a portfolio, right? And so I think that could be very interesting. I think companies like DoorDash and GoPuff are really changing the way people are getting their alcohol. I have been in-house at a DTC provider as their head of sales. And so I think about what DTC for spirits and beer looks like as that segment of the industry looks to dismantle some of the regulation that the domestic wine world has been able to circumvent, the states like Kentucky and New York allowing DTC to various states directly from the distillery. So it's just, this is a time and there's a lot of fluctuation in the industry right now. And so I have no prediction, only analysis. I have some prediction, but no real hot takes.
Well, what are those? What's your outlook?
Look is generally positive as a human being, although quite pragmatic. So I don't know. I mean, I'm aligning myself with digital marketing and data. So, right. And brands, right? Sure. But if those two primary contracts that I'm working on are an indication of where I'm hedging, then that's it.
So you've been an entrepreneur now. What's a example of, or can you summarize what it takes in one word or a sentence and what it takes to be an entrepreneur?
One word is there's just no way. And an incredible amount of grit and rejection resilience, borderline delusional.
Yep. I agree with all that. Yeah, grit is immediately because, when you're starting a company, you work all the time. Every day's Groundhog Day. Every day's a Monday.
Mondays get a bad.
There's just a lot of work to do.
There's always a lot. The work is always there.
Yeah, but it's fun.
As long as it's fun. When it
Yeah,
starts getting not fun, that's when it needs to be examined for what's going on.
Do you know who Seth Benheim is with Badwater Brands and Broken Barrel? Well, he has a bourbon that he created with staves. He was kind of one of the first brands to do that. He's also got a vodka, flavored vodkas that he's done very well with. But he's this amazing creator of brands. He just loves creating brands. And so there's this picture of him sitting on the ground in front of a barrel, and he's like, I'm exhausted, but I couldn't be happier. Because he's doing what he loves, right? And it's a lot of work, but it's work that he really enjoys. And I think that's an entrepreneur, right? Yeah.
I agree.
What about passions outside of work? You like the beach.
I haven't been down to the beach since the hurricanes hit in September, October. They are recovered. I don't know what that hangover is there that I haven't gone down. I mean, the last couple of weeks it's been not properly freezing. That's an overstatement, but it has been properly cold here in Florida.
It's been cold, yeah.
But yeah, the back half of last year was so crazy. Travel, kicking off new contracts. I was all over the place, plus the hurricanes, which hit this area brutally, brutally hard.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a blur. So I'm not surprised I haven't been down there. That's like the equivalent of asking me I've thought about this before. What do you do for fun? It is fun. I go to yoga. Like I said, I take meditation classes, like working out, sauna, cryotherapy, like just optimizing the meat suit. It's fun. I love to laugh. My friends and I, actually, this is a good answer. My group of girlfriends and I, we run pranks on each other. And so whenever there's a prank about, that is always a good time. So that is something that I do. I've been wrestling with this for a couple of days now. Someone asked me this a couple of days ago. I was like, man, fuck if I know. Because I make lots of things fun,
Yeah.
I love listening to music, concerts, proper fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went on a tear last year of concerts. I have a couple coming up in the next few months, but I was like, I went to like multiple in a week.
Nice.
A couple of different times in the fall, a few different times in the fall. Travel. Yeah. But yeah, the pranks are great. That's a lot of fun.
That's hilarious. I love that.
Yeah, we do some funny shit.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good time. Good times. That's great. Well, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you want to mention, or maybe your website?
Yeah, the company is Dauntless Performance Coaching. So it's dauntlesspc.com. And you can see the subcontractors. I've got a blog on there, and my face is somewhere on that website. Yeah, we covered a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think
cool
in
stuff.
closing, Jesse, I can't wait to hear how you come around to the functional area that is sales in all of your endeavors. And I look forward to hearing how maybe anything that I said about like, just be interested and solve problems. And then, gotta ask for this.
Yep. Yeah. I don't like asking people for things. I think that's the underlying. I am giving them something. That's true. It's true. I'm solving problems with the platform for all stakeholders.
Exactly right. That's a little bit lighter in your seat in the end with what you said. So you leading your own sales-focused podcast here in the next few months, once all the gears grind together and click.
Yeah, I can't wait either. I've been dreaming about this moment for a very long time, putting it out there, manifesting it, stepping up into the role. I'm ready.
Let me know how I can support that journey. I'm happy to.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I could always use help one way or another.
It would be my pleasure.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's do something. I'd love it.
Jesse, thank you so much. Enjoyed this conversation very much.
Yeah, me too. This is great. Thank you so much. And with that, I'll say goodbye and let you get back to your day.
Good. Take care, everybody.
Okay. Bye.
Produced by Fedora J Productions.